Master Reddit. Subscribe for more videos.
What are the superpowers that people think are good, but are actually effed up? I think Man of Steel did a good job showing how shitty super hearing would be. Don't forget Daredevil. Try sleeping at night when you can hear everyone being beaten, raped and murdered around you. And it doesn't even award you super strength or resilience. You either have to listen to it happening and go crazy, or you put your life on the line and get your ass kicked every night. It gets worse though, since sound has a travel time. It means you're hearing everything after the fact. Superman never really arrives in time to save anyone, because no matter how fast he is, sound is still moving at the same speed. Super hearing is really only useful if you want to be a spy or a blackmailer. Superman's hearing isn't exactly based on sound, as weird as that sounds. You can tell because he can hear something like a mugging going on in a different continent, but when he flies there, it's still going on, even though the sound wave indicates that it should have finished several minutes ago at the very least. That's just comic writers not understanding science. I mean, consider the subject. Science and comics have a distant relation at best. My favorite is when Supes is up in space and hears someone down on Earth. Lol, what? I once heard Superman's powers could be psychic in nature. It sounds stupid, but how does Superman lift an airplane by its nose or tail, or pick up an entire skyscraper by lifting a single corner of it, or even a car? If you could pick up a car by its bumper and swing it in the air, the bumper would rip right off. Same for a building, airplane or ship, yet Superman can do it with no problems. The real answer is that it's comic book writing, but the thought is kind of interesting. The explanation for most of Superman's abilities tends to be, he has psychic powers but doesn't use them how we normally portray psychic people. Invulnerability, super speed, strength, telekinetic field around his whole body. This explains everything related to that. He just uses his abilities directly like extensions of himself rather than like some supernatural tool. The idea behind him hearing what couldn't possibly be heard as something telekinetic field is much larger than just his body. The evidence used to explain that is when he picks up a ship or something equally huge. It doesn't fall to pieces. His field expands and holds it up, but he does that without having to think about it. Same applies for knowing what's going on continents away, he just interprets it as sound. At least that's the idea anyway. Why doesn't he use it like a normal psychic then? Because he's spent literally his whole life suppressing it. He's lived in a world made of paper, and him losing control means people die. Ergo, he doesn't control it as directly as others are portrayed. He experiences it as naturally as his other natural senses and abilities. Time travel. Imagine the unspeakable things that could happen if you royally fuck up something important. That's why you're supposed to have a plan to prevent this by finding a place where nobody would be and waiting there for like 5 minutes so that if everything goes wrong future you can go back and stop. You don't need to wait. Just always go to a specific location before doing something with time. Anything goes wrong, travel back to that location and leave yourself a note. Make sure you check to see if you've been left a note when you do that, though. Going through walls, as you are probably sinking underground at the same time. You can negate that pretty easily by jumping before you go through, yay, but can only fuck up once. Trip to China, here we go. In the Gone book series, this kid Albert gets attacked by a cat that can teleport. He goes to hit it with a book and it phases into it and dies. Imagine accidentally letting your power slip when walking through a wall. Reminds me of Mirio from My Hero Academia. He can phase through objects, but when he does, he loses all of his senses. And he loses his normal clothes too. So if he wasn't wearing his superhero outfit he would be running around naked. Context for some people, his hero costume is made out of his hair, sort of, so that his quirk power works on it, since it only works on his body parts and things from his body. His power has a pretty awesome failsafe too. He can never become stuck in something if he happened to turn it off while phased. It just pops him back up to where he can exist unfazed really fast. His mass can never overlap existing mass. It's a neat way of working out the whole, falling to the center of the Earth drawback that phasing would have. Then they made him a whole fighting style based around this. Probably super speed. At a certain speed, crashing into anything would kill you instantly, and running past someone going the speed of sound probably isn't good for them either. It only makes sense if you perceive the world going as slow-mo and you go at your own regular speed. Which sounds like a fun new personal hell. Also, coming to a sudden stop would fucking liquefy you. Wasn't there an episode of Jimmy Neutron where this exact scenario happens? Jimmy makes some running shoes that enable him to run at incredible speed, but in typical fashion, he messes up somehow and can't stop running. Eventually, he finally manages to stop, but gets turned into jelly neutron as a result. I had a very vivid flashback of this episode as I read this. Also, SpongeBob had an episode where he got a superpower and literally ran until he disintegrated, though it might have just been Squidward's lava thing that melted him, not too sure about that. Green Lantern's deal where he can will imagination into life. Not the most popular hero or power, but Jesus, think of the possibilities, considering us depraved fuckers. Don't care, gonna be beating Sinestro with a giant green dildo. Excuse me. I'd like some say in that, please. Shoulda thought of that before being all, well, sinister. Most superpowers would not be able to stop the world's governments all trying to capture and experiment on you. All it would take is one slip up and you would be on the run. While you could maybe hold them off for a while, you would have to constantly be on the lookout, unable to enjoy the life you once had as a normal member of society. What about teleportation though? I mean, if you get caught, just teleport yourself to Iran or something. Even supposing enemies don't have the necessary technology to render your powers useless given the element of surprise, you could never settle down, never live a normal life. Any friends or family would be captured and probably kept hostage. Well, what if you just find the guys responsible for that, which should be possible with your ability, and, for example, leave a teddy bear with a message in their toddler's bed? You would first have to figure out who, at the heart of it, is responsible, which would not be easy given you are being hunted by multiple world governments with complex bureaucracies. Also, I'm assuming you would have to have seen a place to teleport there. You would then have to be okay with potentially killing dozens of people who are ultimately just doing their job. Supposing you have no problems with those two things, and by some miracle have managed to make an agreement with every world government, you would still be constantly living in fear, every day on the lookout for shady organizations who, even if you change your identity, will probably be able to track you. And you bet that agreement you signed says you cannot use your abilities in public. I could go on, but even if you have your freedom, it would never be a peaceful one. Honestly, I would teleport the president to the middle of the desert so frequently he'd know not to fuck with me. Teleport to the guy giving you trouble, teleport him and you into NASA HQ, get spacesuits, teleport him into space, teleport back somewhere. Leave him there for a few minutes. Come back and tell him next time there won't be a spacesuit, this guy teleports. Ever seen the movie Jumper? The books actually go deeper into it. In the sequel, Reflex, the main character has an implant connected to his vagus nerve to reflex his will back to a certain location. It's basically a device that shoots a current into his vagus nerve anytime it's not receiving the right signal. So if he tries to jump away, he'd start vomiting and basically feel like he's about to die until he jumps back to a specific 1 square meter prison cell in a nice house on Martha's Vineyard. I've been reading a web story lately, Worm, which is set in a modern world where people have superpowers. Reads a lot like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, or Shadowrun, and is incredibly well written. Lots of weird, non-traditional superpowers cleverly used. I'd highly recommend reading it, one of if not the best web stories out there. The following are spoilers from a character from that story. In the story there is a character that has almost ultimate healing powers. Essentially she can touch a person and fix anything and everything. This sucks for her because she's a fairly moral, ethical person, as most of us are, which means she feels compelled to spend every day at hospitals curing people. Anytime she wants to take a day or even an hour off, she feels guilty that she's watching a movie instead of curing a kid with cancer or something. She knows an hour of her time turns a patient's life around, including their family and friends. Imagine living like that, healing people day in day out, passing on hobbies, entertainment, friends. You'd be famous as well, being the last and best hope for many, and any time you would be discovered to be taking time off, there'd be thousands calling you every name in the book because they think you're being selfish. Hell, there's a good chance there's more than a few desperate people that will talk like that even if you spend 16+ hours every day curing people. And you get numb to it, too. Saving a person would be great, saving a bunch of people would feel fucking awesome. Saving people every minute of every day for the rest of your life? You'd have to have the personality of an absolute saint to be able to live a life happily like that. There's not many people like that. So yeah, healing superpowers would fucking suck to have. There's another huge downside that isn't immediately obvious. Right now a lot of people die when their doctors and family agree to withdraw life support because there's nothing left that can bring that person back to a meaningful quality of life. With someone like Panacea existing, everyone will want to do everything to stay alive until Panacea gets around to you. The number of patients consuming vast amounts of resources would be quickly unmanageable in our current situation. Telepathy. Fuck. What if you can turn it on and off at will? Imagine hearing everyone's thoughts all at once. How do you focus on one person and filter out the noise? Hopefully it wouldn't be very different from hearing a bunch of people talking in a crowd. If you tried to hear all of them at once, it would sound like mindless chatter, but you could easily focus on a few people's thoughts. The ability to never die, you still feel pain and age. Your life would get increasingly worse and eventually watch the world crumble. And even if you were granted eternal youth in addition to eternal life, you would eventually live to see the death of the rest of humanity, then the death of the earth, then the heat death of the universe. And you would just be floating in an endless void, conscious but unable to interact with anything. Man, I wish I'd never found that goddamn lamp. Stupid fucking genie. I just had to blurt it out, didn't I? I wish I were immortal. Half the time they can't even make you immortal, but Sim Allah Bim of the Seven Winds just snapped his fingers and said it is done. Damn, was I stoked. I don't even remember what my other two wishes were. Doesn't make a damn bit of difference now. Oh, it was awesome for a while. I was all jumping off buildings and shit, getting shot and electrocuted, eating glass, the whole extreme sports gambit. I did it all. Nothing could kill me. Then all my friends and family started dying. That really sucked for a while. I made new friends, but they died too. After 6 or 7 times through with that, I figured friends weren't really worth it. I lived like a fucking hermit. PFFT, how long did that last? 2,000-3,000 years? 4, tops. Yeah, I started talking to people again. Made new friends. They died too, but I was over it by then. Mankind did some really amazing shit over the next couple 100 million years. That was awesome to see too, at first. I went to all sorts of planets, watched them move stars and build Dyson spheres. They even cured themselves of all known disease and started living longer. It was so nice to have some friends that didn't just die after 100 years or so. But then they started evolving. People were turning into pure energy left and right. I couldn't do awesome shit like that, stuck in my immortal body. So I made my way back to Earth to see how they were doing there, but it turned out to be long since abandoned. So I was stranded on this worthless rock I'd seen a million times over with nothing to do. Yeah, the planet had changed quite a bit since I'd last been there, but I still wasn't occupied for more than a million years or so. After that it was boring as hell. I remember once I just sat on the edge of a cliff and waited for whatever continent I was on to drift into another one. Jeez. But it seemed to keep getting hotter. Now, my immortal ass can stand any temperature you could throw at it, but that doesn't mean I wasn't uncomfortable. Shit, it was hotter than 2 rats fucking in a wool sock. Pretty soon, the oceans were boiling. Now that is a sight to see. I even went swimming in it. Real smart, you fucking genius. I lost track of time, and before I knew it, the oceans were fucking gone and I was sitting at the bottom. Everywhere I went trying to get back up, bam. Continental shelf. Took me 1,000 years to find a way back up. The whole thing was desert by that time anyway. Then there was this galaxy that was fucking huge in the sky. It got so big, it took up the whole damn sky. After a while, you couldn't tell its stars from the normal ones. Then all the stars, new and old, started moving around in all these weird patterns. It was some show, let me tell you, most interesting thing I'd seen in a while. But just as it was getting good, the goddamn sun exploded. Now, the sun exploding itself was an even cooler sight than all those extra stars. It got really damn big. Hotter than hell, but worth it. And then bang. Fucker started exploding. It kept going off for probably 1 billion years. It was awesome at first, but shit, give it enough time and anything is boring. By the time it was done it was like night all the time and the sun wasn't all that much brighter than the other stars in the sky. Not to mention that it was cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey now. So I waited. And waited. I memorized the stars and came up with names for all of them. And I waited. It was so fucking cold, I didn't move around that much. I couldn't even tell you how long it was, cause it was too damn cold to think. Shit, how I waited. But then the damnedest thing happened. There was this huge, deafening roar. The sky was on fire. It started getting hot again. The wind got stronger and stronger until I was flying. Then came the loudest fucking sound I've ever heard in my life, and I found myself flying up and away from the earth itself. When I finally got far enough away, I figured it out. Must have been an asteroid or something. Big fucker, though, there was a sizable chunk of planet missing, a lot of it was still glowing red hot. Now let me tell you, I thought it was cold on solid ground with no sun, but that was nothing. Empty space is fucking cold. That and not being able to breathe, damn, that was an unpleasant time. I drifted away from what was left of the solar system. After a while I could see the giant cloud of shit left over from when the sun exploded. But then I just kept going. Man, it was a long time. Trillions of years, probably. I landed on planets or even in stars from time to time. If I was on a planet, I was never there more than 1 billion years or so before another fucking asteroid came and threw me off of it. When I landed in stars, hotter than fuck, I just had to wait until it exploded and sent me off in some other direction. It really sucked. But eventually I drifted out of the galaxy altogether. Of course it was nothing like that big pinwheel they told us it was in junior high. Just a big irregular blob. Just drifting and drifting, still couldn't breathe. I passed other galaxies. Even from where I was, I could see stars exploding in the close ones. That was cool for a while. But I guess they were all running out of stars or something, the galaxies kept getting dimmer. About the time the last galaxies were going out, I started to feel like I was going faster. A definite sensation of acceleration. I started spinning around. I don't know around what, but I could tell I was spinning from the few galaxies left out. I started to feel like I was stretching out too. And then I couldn't see anything at all. Not too long after that I just felt crushed and stopped moving. Just saying that doesn't do it justice. I couldn't even move myself anymore. I felt like someone had crammed me inside a fucking shoebox or something. This went on for a long fucking time. And I just kept feeling smaller and smaller and smaller. When suddenly I was free. Well, I wasn't being crushed anymore. But I still couldn't move and still felt tiny as fuck. And I still couldn't see anything. But that's where it ended. Nothing has happened since then. Nothing. And that was a really fucking long time ago. I've already rethought every thought I ever had a Google times. That's not even an exaggeration, I counted. Yeah, I counted to a Google. That's how long I've been out here. Man, this fucking sucks. Immortality blows. I think I'd be okay with that tbh, if you had Forver you'd probably figure something out. Pack some books for the journey. Learn how to draw hentai, when the next universe comes around you'll be a messiah. Sign me right the fuck up. Shapeshifting, I think my original nose was a bit longer. Show me reference photo number 3 again. Definitely longer. Well, no. That doesn't look right either. Is it because of the cheeks? Are these too narrow? Trying to turn back into your normal self would be like a character creation screen every time. Or anybody else really. But yourself would be hardest. Your perception of yourself is going to be skewed because you only ever see yourself from a specific range of angles in reflections. Maybe shapeshifting is like having tension, and relaxing will return you to your original shape. I always thought it is like this. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe to AskReddit right now by clicking the subscribe button below this video.